KSQD 90.7 Weekly Cutting Edge. I'm your host, Galina Hale, Professor of Economics at UCSC and Faculty Director at the Institute for Social Transformation. My guest today is Ned LeBlond.
Hello.
Ned is the Executive Director at the Institute for Social Transformation, and I've been working with him for a couple of years now, and I'm very excited to learn more about Ned along with you.
I'm
Uh,
excited to be here.
So, Ned, let's start with your current position. What do you do? And I'm assuming you like what you do, so why do you like the work we are doing here at the Institute?
Yeah. So Ned LeBlond, Executive Director of the Institute for Social Transformation. I love my job. Um, we at the Institute build networks of scholars and researchers with community leaders, and we're really working to find ways that research can shine a light on some of the world's most systemic injustices. And we're trying to really find actionable ways to build community power so that those communities that we're trying to support can take action based on research to build a better world. And my job as the executive director is to work with our amazing staff who are community organizers. They've come up through the bureaucracies of UCSC. They understand how to work through a lot of our very siloed systems, try to help the process out so that the researchers that they get to work with and I get to work with can really focus on the research itself. And really, instead of wasting their time on process, they're really keeping their focus on shifting power for community members. And so it's the Institute has kind of evolved into this position, trying to figure out how to do this work, to be a bridge for community members. And like I said, I love my job because I really get to learn so much from the faculty who are really pioneers in their specific fields. It is one of the great pleasures to not just learn from our justice-oriented staff who all have great perspectives and experiences, but these leading faculty whose knowledge and deep roots in particular problems, it, to work with them at this edge of how to take the knowledge into application, into real applied research and social justice work. I couldn't imagine myself having the opportunity to do this. I feel really incredibly lucky to be able to do that work. It's work. It's working within systems. So a lot of my job is really just trying to keep the ship afloat, making sure that our staff are funded, that they're growing as practitioners in this space that is very new. And so, they're often creating as they're moving, and so helping them feel supported through that really hard process. And then also, working with faculty to help them understand the Institute and how we work and how we actually can support and bridge them to make this impact. And then also helping this research institution become accountable to community members. Because a lot of what we're trying to do is deconstruct the power structures within universities. Universities have a deep legacy of actually being separate from and creating silos of building up academics to kind of be top tier society leaders and really create an elite class. And that goes back hundreds of years. And over the last 30, 50 years, people have been really trying to work hard to break that down. And the Institute is just the latest manifestation of how we actually deconstruct power within academia and make it available again to the public and work for the public interest.
Yeah, no, this is fantastic. There's only one thing I want to maybe question you on is,
Yeah.
you mentioned faculty don't have to waste time on this work. I wouldn't call
Mhm.
it waste time,
That's true.
right? It's
No.
just the work that our staff do in connecting the community, doing all this legwork to organize, make sure people get paid when they need
Mhm.
to be paid, make sure maintain the relationships with community organizations
Right.
in a way that's mutually beneficial. Faculty could do all this,
Yeah.
but they're not nearly as good at doing all this. And I speak as
Yeah,
a faculty.
absolutely.
It's much nicer to have a professional to do a lot of this work so the researcher can focus on research design
Mhm.
and kind of do their deep thinking and translating fundamental knowledge to
Yeah.
applied knowledge.
Well, and I think it is a waste in the sense that from if you're actually paying somebody to do the research,
Mhm.
it's actually much better to not pay faculty salary to do administrative tasks. It's a better use of research funds. And I think that's where we get into, the way we've actually evolved the work is to actually be more accountable with public funds. And I think this is just one of the tiny ways in which we actually really, it's not a waste. It's very important, valuable, and necessary work. But to have someone who's actually skilled in doing that work is a much better use of that time. So I completely agree.
No, exactly. I mean, it takes Jessica is one of the people on our staff who processes the payments. She does it about 10 times faster than I could do. And so obviously I never thought about this as the responsible use of public funds, especially if money comes from the federal or state grants.
Mhm. And even if
So
it's philanthropic funds, I mean,
yeah,
we want
exactly.
to use those funds so that it has maximum potential to
Yeah.
create public good.
Yeah, no, I never thought about that. That's a good point of view. So you talked a little bit about the work at the Institute, but what I did not hear is why those issues and why this work personally resonate with you, how
Mm.
it fits with your personal values.
Yeah, I think I have to go really far back to really understand that. I was trying to think through what really brought me here. And my road is pretty secure. It is not linear. I, I mean, I got my physics and environmental studies degree. I have an MBA in sustainable management. I was teaching kids in the backcountry for years and years and years. And, thinking through how I landed here, it really comes down to following the values that I had from my parents to really give to the community. Both my parents, my dad was a doctor, my mom was a nurse, and they're constantly working to save lives. And just seeing that around, they wanted me to be a doctor, they wanted me to be a lawyer, and I think I rebelled against that as a kid. But I still had this ethos to do something better, to do something really valuable and to be useful is how I kind of internalized it. And I think that's kind of one of my mantras is, I want to wake up every day and find that thing that can actually make the world a little bit better of a place. It's like my puzzle that I try to figure out. And doing this day after day after day has kind of led me on this, yes, a circuitous path, but really, I think it's also led me to have some of the most amazing experiences and some of the most diverse experiences. And um, yeah, I mean, I think when I think through like what are the roots of justice in me, I think there's kind of two pieces. One is that I grew up in rural Montana, and rural Montana is predominantly white. I was probably one of three kids of color in that school, and it was so white that I actually grew up with a like almost a white identity. And it took me a long time to kind of deconstruct my experiences to even name a lot of what I grew up with as some racist experiences. I didn't experience it necessarily. I didn't internalize it as that. I didn't really see it like that until my 30s and 40s. But yeah, there was definitely this sense of there was a racial inequity there. And then there was also just living in rural Montana where my dad was a doctor and building the clinic and helping to really uplift the hospital there and build healthcare systems for people. He really helped me understand that this is a systems problem, like taking care of people is a systems problem. One of the things he ended up trying to do when I was much older, even in college, was to build like a hub and spoke system for healthcare in Montana. And he really went against the CEOs in the healthcare system, at the Billings Clinic, to try and build this system and seeing how hard it is to do this systems change, and how actually very important the people are within that system. And so, that was some of the roots of what I was kind of instilled with, but also one of my formative experiences was way back in fifth grade. My dad was going to study, he studied AIDS in Africa, in Kampala, Uganda. I lived there for a year. He moved the whole family there for a year. And I got to see what war does. Idi Amin had just been dictator taken over the country. Polio, AIDS was had totally taken over the country. My first impressions were how beautiful the smells and the earth were there. And then going through the airport and realizing, how different our infrastructures are, and then driving out down the road with our driver, Zonko, who is a hilarious man who I got to adore, and seeing police, seeing warriors with bazookas and AK-47s just walking down the road as if it was casual as ever, and then going to sleep at night and listening to gunfires. Definitely had an impression. We were in McCary University at the time, and it really just drove home, that there are huge systemic inequities, and war is a social problem. And despite all of that, you'd still drive down the street and see kids playing with a soccer ball that is totally made out of rubber bands and is this big. And I've never seen kids smile so big in my life. So I got to see this huge juxtaposition of wealth and power and systems, but how at the core of everything, people are persevering, they're happy, and there's meaning in even the little things. And so that really stayed with me as I was going through a lot of my time. I ended up getting my physics degree. I was trying to find, um, really the understand the fundamental, like what actually builds this world. That's kind of why I chose my physics and math. I really wanted to understand basic principles, and through that, understanding, chemistry and what fire actually is and how it's releasing energy and all those elements. It's like it's a beautiful way to be able to see the world on this theoretical edge. And I really love getting to the basis of things. It's part of that problem solving that I have, but there's still this human element that's very missing from that, right? And I didn't want to be stuck in the lab in you know trying to figure out, solve problems looking through a microscope and being on the computer all day. So I actually, instead of following my parents' path, instead of following the physics path, the astronomy route that I was thinking about, I actually followed in my sister's footsteps and wanted to become a teacher. And how I ended up doing that was teaching and guiding through a social justice summer camp here just over the hill, Hidden Villa. And I was guiding kids on a social justice summer camp that started at the farm and went over the hill to the beach on the other side through, oh my gosh, Castle Park, Castle Rock State Park. And I really was able to, in that network, really see how organizing and social justice is a way for people who do not have power to gain power. And it was such a beautiful that it was this camp was essentially built by a family of Quakers whose values were in World War II to um, they saw the systemic racism when a lot of the Japanese internment camps were created, and they wanted to deconstruct that. So they created this summer camp to bring wealthy kids and poor kids together and work across races to help teach people that people are people. And that's when I really felt back to that kinship of like, okay, people are what really matters. And I had come from this, atomization of the world, but just knowing that it's through people and creating values and community and learning together that really can shape the potential, human potential and societal potential. That's where it kind of really all started to come together.
Yeah, no, so yeah, this is beautiful. Can you tell us a little bit how you ended up in California, though, from Montana?
I think it was really it was a bit of, so that camp was I went from Montana and to Iowa actually. That's where my dad he was the chief quality officer for the University of Iowa. Finished up high school there, which was really good because honestly, if I had not left Montana and gone to Iowa, I probably would have not gone to college.
Mhm.
So it was a really thoughtful move that my dad did to pull me out of there. It was really hard for me to do. But then I graduated and I ended up wanting to move closer to my grandparents and my aunts who lived in Washington. I ended up going to school at University of Puget Sound, where I got my physics and math
Mhm.
degree, environmental studies minor. And then from there, I actually hitchhiked from Washington down the one to California, where I got that job. And then I was just bouncing around. I think when I think about fundamental structures in society, I think one of the worst things that we are not able to do in our society is to have work that has meaning and still live comfortably.
Mhm.
And so I decided to not live comfortably for a long time. I wanted to do work that had meaning and have value. And so I stuck with it. And for 10 years, I was teaching. I went all around the world. Worked hoods in the woods and tried to just change the lives of kids who were incarcerated. And we were out in the Utah desert and, working with kids who had literally killed people, who have smuggled drugs, who are trying to feed their parents who are addicted to heroin by selling drugs, working with those kids and trying to find ways for them to get out. And then, I ended up working for Outward Bound. I ended up working for Yosemite Institute, which is now Nature Bridge. And I had the privilege of teaching kids in Yosemite Valley, in the Sierras, about how they are physically and literally not just spiritually, not just esoterically, but literally connected to the water, the earth through the food they eat and the places that they live. Like you are literally connected to those things. They are literally part of your body. And then helping them connect that not just to biology, but to their economy, to social studies, and how all of these things actually manifest and shape the life that you're actually living. It was such a privilege to wake up and be able to find ways to teach that essential lesson to kindergarten kids all the way up to having super deep conversations with kids all the way up to college. And just seeing every day after day to have the privilege to teach in that classroom and help connect for them all the dots for how they are truly, the land matters and that interconnection matters and that you are literally connected not just to the earth, but to everyone around you. And that was the most formative time in my life. When I think about the skills that actually I use in my job every day, it's actually from that time. It's working with people, it's helping them progress and learn from wherever they're at, wherever their mind is. If they're a little over hyperactive, I hate the word hyperactive, very active. Um, Kid who's just trying to see something, helping them discover that that's actually a really valuable tool, and they're the ones who are actually seeing a lot of the stuff around them, and then building that in. Or if there's a kid who, really thinks that they're just into this one particular thing, help opening that up and to see how, there is so much more connection to their interests into other disciplines that they thought, oh, economics, social studies is different, which is other, but it's actually we've somehow contained learning into these discrete sections, but helping them make and build more connections between those elements, I think really makes us more human. And so I love that. I love being able to do that, and I still do that today. But I think I ended up having to leave that position because even though it was so valuable and so privileged, it was I had stopped growing and learning. And
Yeah, so I was just gonna ask you, how
yeah,
do you go from that? You got your MBA after?
yeah,
Like it's
after
kind of
that,
a big jump from saying, hey,
totally.
I'm gonna live uncomfortably, but do
Right,
good for people,
right,
going to MBA, which to most people is like, well, that's about how to make money. Like
right,
people go
right,
MBA because they want to have lucrative
totally.
jobs that are about profits, not people.
Yeah. And that was one of the biggest jumps. And I think one of the, like, if there is a story arc, it's yes, it's following my values, but I think it's also that I'm willing to take these really big risks, believing in myself in a way, and also a huge amount of luck. A huge amount of luck. And so I wanted to learn the tools of the oppressor. And I knew I didn't want to do it just as a normal MBA. So I wanted to try and find something that I could actually live with at the end of the day. And so I ended up finding this amazing school, Presidio Graduate School, which is an MBA in sustainable management. And it was originally in the Presidio in San Francisco. But by the time I was going there, it was actually downtown, the offices. But it was really I thought I was going to learn the tools of the oppressor, and I think I did. But in that, um, I think I got more of a organizational psychology degree, really understanding systems change through that process, really understand how people are really part of these bureaucratic systems and how to work with them to do incredibly hard things and also do incredibly hard, like a lot of it was based on how to change, the whole structure of an organization and how to help people process pain, right? Change management is what it's called. And, I think that's a terrible thing to have to learn because it's like causing trauma on people and helping them just deal with it. But I think there was a lot of skills that you can use within that to help people. It was in some ways a lot of the similar psychology of helping kids get up a giant mountain, and
Yeah.
helping them understand where they're at and are you okay moving forward? And I think that's kind of one of the things that I've been able to continue with that work, not only just learning um, investment structures, understanding equity, understanding leverage, and all those elements that really, build businesses, but I think really understanding how people and groups within organizations can actually do big things together. That's one of the great things that I think I came out of it. And I ended up doing work in the nonprofit sector for obvious reasons. And even in that realm, I was actually having conversations with investors who were self-proposed social impact investors and became very disillusioned with that whole process. I really, to be honest, felt like, you feel like a horse getting bet on, and I had such a huge turnoff with that zone. Even with the social impact investors, they said they want to make change, but they didn't want to change the return on investment. They still wanted 20x, and that itself, even coming from the most socially motivated investors, is such a turnoff and a huge trigger point in our society that is a culture shift that I cannot change, And so I was like, what do I do now? And so, going through this nonprofit management work, I was super lucky to find this position managing grants at UCSC. And it
When
was
was that? What year was that you started at UCS?
2013, I want to say,
Okay.
2013.
At the Office of Research?
No, that was before that. So this was with the
Okay.
Genome Browser. This is with the Genomics
Oh,
Institute. So
okay.
I ended up getting a job working with um, working with Jim Kent under Dave Hausler, managing the Genome Browser. And it was a great crew. And I, learned a whole lot about, working with 60, 50 person teams and keeping them afloat on grants. And there was so much work happening at the Institute. We were constantly working on some upwards of 17, 18 grants at the same time. Probably 7 or 8 applications, trying to make sure that people are fully funded, that we're meeting the project goals, working with the PIs to talk with program officers, constantly on the outlook for new funding and trying to balance this whole thing. It was such a huge juggling act trying to keep that going. When I was looking at applying to that next position, I ran the numbers. I had Under that job, I was running about 10% of the university's research portfolio.
That should go on your resume. I mean, this is kind of the job you're doing now
In a lot of ways, yeah.
in a more difficult space because it's much harder to get the grants in the non-STEM
Right.
social science, social
Yeah,
justice research than
yeah,
for like genome. Do you think your
exactly.
physics degree helped you get that job?
I do in the sense that I understood quite a bit about processes around the genome. I became very conversant, around the projects. And I think having a scientific background really helped with that. Um, but it was different. But I think that's something that I've been able to do, and one of my strengths. Sorry if you can hear the crunching. That's my dog down there. Um, he's just hanging out. Yeah, it's being able to understand at a basic level what the research is that we're working on is an absolute fundamental need for that job and my office of research work and this current job. I'm never going to be able to replace faculty and their work, but to understand how to translate what they're doing to everyday people and communicate about the work is a key aspect. Um,
Yeah,
so,
and you talked a lot about your job being a bridge, helping people bridge the gaps of understanding, the
mhm.
gaps of the cultural gaps,
Yeah,
the goal gaps. And I feel like, because of your experience, I feel like you're also bridging the gap between the faculty and the staff in the sense that there's sometimes tension that the staff don't really understand what it takes to do, like, what is research, like why do you spend 5 years writing one paper that's 20 pages long, what's wrong with you?
right.
um, uh, and faculty don't understand what the staff are doing, like
Mhm.
why do you need 3 days to organize a conference, well,
Yeah.
3 months to organize a conference? I thought it takes 2 hours. So I think
Yeah,
having those experiences and being able to speak the language of all the people, I think is extremely valuable because you do help people value each other's work. And I think that's
I appreciate that.
that's a big building block for collaboration.
Yeah, I think
We
one of
only,
the,
yeah,
go ahead.
we only have a couple of minutes left. So I want to kind of come back to kind of a big picture of what we're doing.
Sure.
A friend of mine said, look, if you're working for a goal that, social justice, environmental sustainability, the thriving democracy that you might not achieve in your lifetime, like, why do you do it? Well, you do it because it's worth doing, right? Like, what else would
Right.
you be spending your time on if not something that's changing the world? So, how do you reconcile the fact that, systems change that you talk about is extremely
Mhm.
difficult? Like
Mhm.
UCSC is a big bureaucratic system and we work within it. We
Yeah,
try to change it a little bit. So maybe
right.
say a couple of words about this.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the difference between a North Star and, making use of the day you have to do something concrete. And I mean, if we didn't have that North Star, we would, I think, be quite aloof. But, the change that the Institute has found itself in is really a gift from the past, right? I did not create the Institute. Somebody before me actually created the Institute. And I came into this position and went into this current, and I'm just trying to pay it forward for others to have that same opportunity. We're probably not going to ever achieve our North Star. Does that mean we stop? Absolutely not. The goal is not about achieving that goal. It's about what can you actually make happen in the ever-present now. And I honestly believe that it's not, we're not going to arrive at the future. It's that we're building the future today. And so, it's for me, life's journey is really about, it's not about you, but it's about what you can do for other people and provide in that space. You have to take care of yourself through that process. You need to be whole so you can show up each day and really know what your priorities are, right? Like the Institute is a huge priority for me, but so is my kid,
Mhm.
so is my family, and so we have to balance all of these things. And if I don't achieve the North Star that we want for social justice today, but I worked for it and I helped pave a path for someone else to follow through and maybe open up a door for a few others, then I am absolutely successful, especially if I can get home and give my kid a hug.
Yeah, yeah. Also, get home on time. Get to pick up your kid on
Pick up your
time.
kid. Yeah, exactly. Don't be
Exactly.
late.
All right. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much, Ned, for your time.
Thank you, Galina, for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. It was great to be here. I had fun.
This has been Cutting Edge at KSQD 90.7. I'm Galina Hale. Goodbye.